Okay, I'm ready. So good evening, everyone, and I'm happy to be back here again. The last time we talked on certification, you see, we just have 1 hour, so I would definitely, try to be fast, and at the same time, we should try to cover much again. Last time we talked about solar certification, and then we ran through the solar certificates. Some questions came in. We tried to, answer these few questions. I think everybody had a good understanding. So for today, we're still on certification, but we're going to look at now another convention. SOLAS is a convention itself, so we're going to look at MARPOL convention and certificate associated with MARPOL. Basically, everybody, seafarers, we understand what MARPOL is, it's for pollution prevention at sea. When it talks about environmental protection as well. So we're going to look at all certificates. And while looking at certificates, we're still going to, refresh our knowledge on MARPOL, not just listing the certificates. So we can do, pretty much of a catch up on MARPOL and knowing what certificates. Then we'll also look into some other documents associated, because you could get into an exam and, surveyors will want you to do more elaboration, not just saying, okay, for example, Annex 1 is for, oil, International Oil Pollution Prevention Certificate. They might want to, prompt you further to see if you know other documents associated with that particular annex as well. So these are just the few bits. If we're able to get a proper network as well, I would share, a slide for us to look through around here. So basically, we all know what MARPOL is, like I said earlier. It's just for, pollution prevention, environmental protection. And MARPOL, you hear people say it's like one of the, main pillars of maritime conventions. Like we have the SOLAS, we have the STCW, we have the MARPOL and the MLC as well. These are things that if you go for an exam, for example, you would always have questions from these areas. So looking at MARPOL, let's just go straight into it. We have annexes, and basically we have MARPOL with 6 annexes, and Annex 1, which is prevention of pollution by oil. And this covers, every form of oil pollution at sea and all that. So in looking at this particular area of MARPOL, the first thing we want to know is the certificate that is issued on the basis of Annex 1. We're all aware, just to bring refresh us again, okay, we have the International Oil Pollution Prevention Certificate, and then this certificate is valid for 5 years. Be aware of the survey intervals, which is you have the initial survey, annual surveys, you have an intermediate survey between the 2nd and 3rd anniversary, and also you have a renewal survey as well. That's for the International Oil Pollution Prevention Certificate. And trying to know more about this certificate. This certificate is attached with a Form A and a Form B. The Form A, which is issued to normal cargo ships, while the Form B is basically for oil tankers. For these forms, it's just detailing information regarding the record of construction and equipment you have on board, on the basis of which your International Oil Pollution Prevention Certificate has been issued. So you have information talking about things like your oil filtering equipment, oil water separator. All these things will be part of there. Then for tankers as well, you have the oil and discharge and monitoring control system. Information about that will be there. Then you have, other informations like your tanks and every form of standard connections, including, pumping and piping arrangements. All necessary information will be there as well. It's more like a supporting document that gives you details on, the construction and equipment you have on board. And then just for you guys to have a quick note, when preparing for your exams as well, when dealing with MARPOL, there are some things you should know, like offhand, you should mug it up about the discharge criteria, for example, for in special areas and outside special areas. That should be part of your knowledge as well. So just have that in mind to read it up properly, and also try to understand which vessels will have, the oil filtering equipment only, and which vessel will have the oil discharge monitoring control system as well, the ODMCS. So that should be part of your study. And then this discharge criteria should be well known. Like if I will just quickly dive in briefly, like for the oil filtering equipment, and on definitely it's just for control of discharge of oily water from machinery spaces and bilges, and it's detailing that this discharge pass through an oil filtering equipment, we should not be more than 15 parts per million. And if it's going to be discharged in a special area as well, then it should have an alarm. And if this 15 ppm cannot be maintained, and also an auto stop, so just try to play on this and make sure you have good knowledge about them as well. Then looking at that for the oil discharge monitoring and control systems, well, remember anything from cargo spaces, basically tankers, like discharge from your slop tanks and all. It should at the same time not be more than 30 liters per nautical mile, 50 nautical mile. Ship should be en route. So just try to read up on all that and make sure you have a good knowledge of it, because if you immediately you will be asked the question on that. So look, we've mentioned the Form A, Form B. Let's not forget also that as part of documentations regarding Annex 1, you have your, what we call the SOPEP plan on board, which is your shipboard oil pollution emergency plan. And then try to read up properly on it, look into that document for those who are on board, or if you have time, just go through this manual properly, because you could also be asked questions on that as well. To know, how to do your initial reportings, how to report contracts, how to organize authorities, to have details of your, your SOPEP kit on board, inventories of this. So all of that will be detailed in your SOPEP plan as well. And every other details I might not mention as time permits, maybe we'll go into that. Then also look into, for Annex 1 as well, we have what they call the oil record book, which is in two parts. We have part 1, we have part 2. So try to know, especially for the mate and master candidates, read up on the oil record book properly, try to know what is supposed to be, logged on the oil record book, and what is for part 1, which is for machinery space operations, and the part 2, which is for, operations for cargo spaces and cargo areas, detailing of, ballasting of things like ballasting of your fuel tanks, discharge of this ballast water, how you manage your sludges, all this will be recorded there as well. So have a good knowledge and read up on your oil record book as well. It's part of your Annex 1. These are part of documentations that are also involved in your Annex 1. Then for some, oftentimes they've asked, there have been questions regarding things like for master candidate, for example, how would you know or verify if the details of what the chief engineer is entering on the oil record book is correct as a master, so questions like that have come up as well. So such answers would just, the candidate should just be able to say, okay, you're going to sample things like comparing your bunker delivery notes, with what you have on the oil record book, the log books and all that. So all these comparisons should be made as well. So just try to elaborate to the examiner. It's quite simple. These are things you could just, some kind of common sense questions, but you should just have you know, an understanding of what the examiner requires or what he wants to hear from you as well. So basically that's for Annex 1. I think we'll just move to the Annex 2 now. Annex 2 basically is talking about control of, you know, noxious liquid substances in bulk. These noxious liquid substances are how they are, you know, managed on board. And, you know, there's categories, you know, basically for chemical tankers and offshore supply vessels, you know, they have this certification as well. And the certification they have, you know, is an international pollution prevention certificate for the carriage of noxious liquid substances. And you have information about, you know, your tanks, you know, the noxious liquid substance you could carry as well on that particular kind of vessel or whichever vessel you are on. And also, you know, have a read up on the categories of this substance. You know, have the XYZ and other substances, you know, one which is just like, you know, it's a major hazard, you know, it's a hazard, and the other one is minor, and how their discharge criteria has also been managed as well. So that you should read up on. Basically, you know, everything, any pre-wash or anything done should be discharged to a reception facility, but when the concentration has been washed to about 0.1, so you could discharge into sea. And for MARPOL, remember the ship has to be en route, you know, speed not less than 7 knots, about not less than 12 nautical miles from nearest land depth, not less than 25 meters, and it should be discharged waterline, any form of discoloration. So have a read on that, because also you could get questions on that as well while trying to know the certificate. And for this certificate, it's same as the Annex 1. It has the initial, annual, you know, intermediate and renewal surveys as well, and it's also valid for 5 years. Then other documents attached to this Annex 2, let's look at the SMPP, which is your shipboard marine pollution emergency plan. It's similar to what we have on the SOPEP as well. It's just pretty much the same. Nothing much is quite different. So have a read up on that, have a good knowledge on that, because that will also aid you. Questions will come on that in your exam. Then just as we have the oil record book for Annex 1, we also have what they call the cargo record book as well for Annex 2. These cargo record books is just for you to record, you know, loading, discharging, tanking operations, and any form of accidental discharge as well. Pretty similar to how the oil record book is managed. That is also for the Annex 2. But now, the only difference is that this is solely managed by the deck officers on board. So as a chief officer on such vessels, you would be having your logins on any form of noxious liquid carried on board on the cargo record book. Then we have what they call the procedure and arrangement manual. Try to read up on that as well. Have a good knowledge on what the procedure and arrangement manual is all about. Try to, you know, it's pretty much like, you know, a plan which will detail how, you know, your piping arrangement, your discharge criteria, you know, all these things, equipment, fittings, and all that on board, and how it will give an explanation on the kind of noxious liquid substance you carry, how they are being managed. So all that is part of your procedure and arrangement plan. So, but for those preparing for exams also, it's good you have a read up on that, have thorough knowledge on these things, because questions will come out from that as well. So the next one is for Annex 3. Annex 3 is, you know, talking about harmful substances in package form. Everybody knows pretty much is talking about the dangerous goods, how they are being managed as well on board. And then for this particular annex, there is no certification from the MARPOL side of it, but for DG certifications, like we said last time, is from SOLAS. You have a DSC for DG, but it's also required for this particular area that these things are being managed. You have, you know, how they are packed, the marking, the storage and segregation. Reference should always be made to your IMDG code on board, and the as to carrying this particular kind of substance, you know, you have things like your DG manifest, your DG DOC, DG declaration as well. So basically, these are for the Annex 3 part of it. Then we're going to look into Annex 4, which is, how sewage is being managed, on board, talking about the sewage side of it, international pollution prevention certificate, which is given to the vessel. She would have an international sewage pollution prevention certificate, which is valid for 5 years. And then just for you to be aware, this particular certificate wouldn't have the usual initial, annuals, and intermediate. This particular certificate just have an initial and also a renewal timing, and it's also valid for 5 years. So there is nothing like an annual or intermediate certificate, except maybe when there is some modifications and all that, then there could be an additional survey as well. So that's for that. Then basically you have details regarding your holding tanks for sewage, your community and disinfecting system, and also a sewage treatment plant, depending on which is applicable for your vessel. So just try to look at that certificate thoroughly, make sure you have a good understanding of it, and know what it is on board. And I think that's for Annex 4. Then Annex 5 is garbage. This is pretty much known by everyone on board. Everybody sees the placards, how garbage is. Even if you're not a deck officer, if you're, like a rating on board, this is the first thing, you get briefed during safety briefing, how to manage this garbage on board as well. So that's for Annex 5. There is no certification for it as well, but every vessel would have a garbage management plan. And this garbage management plan will have details regarding collecting, storing, processing, and discharge of garbage on board, and also the officer in charge, and in most cases the chief officer who's in charge of managing this garbage on board. So that will be for Annex 5. Then also we have a garbage record book, similar to what we do with the oil record book and the cargo record book. It's going to record the garbage discharge like into sea, into reception facilities, and anyone that is incinerated. All this will be recorded, position, date, and time will be recorded as well. Also, there is, like a criteria for discharge of garbage. It's not expected that you discharge plastic into sea. So all this to have a read up on this discharge criteria. Questions will pop out from that as well. So have a thorough read on discharge criteria. Make sure you understand what the discharge criteria are for anyone preparing for any exams, oral exams and all that. Then we move into Annex 6. Annex 6 is quite a big one, just like Annex 1. And, it basically talks about, air pollution, how air pollution preventions are put in place, how they are managed. And, it's quite big, it's quite large, and certification you get will be your International Air Pollution Prevention Certificate. This survey interval is the same like the Annex 1. You have, initial, annual, intermediate, and renewal surveys for your International Air Pollution Prevention certificates. Then you also have other certificates that attach but before I move into that, basically let's look at what Annex 6 is covering. You have, first of all, it's covers for ozone depleting substances, basic on the fact that it's trying to protect the environment, the ozone layer as well. So there's a control for that. Volatile organic compounds. And this basically, it's concentrated on oil tankers, the volatile organic compounds, how they are managed, having a manual for that as well on board. Then we have, the NOx and the SOx as well. Then things like your emission control areas come into play, and what is required as well, in terms of noxious oxide and sulfuric oxides, how they are managed, how they are controlled. Try to also be aware of the latest regulations, especially regarding sulfuric oxides, how it is control for now, like for emission control areas, it's 0.1 from 2020, which is this year. And outside emission control areas, the maximum limit is 0.5, which is not to be exceeded. You see in some cases, there will be fuel changeovers for, main merchant vessels, or some for those who work on basically things like supply boats. You see, if you look at your bunker delivery notes thoroughly, you see the fuel you're getting, your AGO is already, given the fact that this limit is not exceeded, and most times it's just 0.1. So just have a good understanding of that, read up on it. And then, we have on the basis of this, we talked about the sulfuric oxide, the other one, which is we have the International Energy Efficiency Certification, and also the Engine International Air Pollution Prevention Certificate. All these are just certificates to, regulate the engines on the vessel, especially when it operates greater than 130 kilowatts. The vessel will have these certificates, supporting how these are managed. We'll have an energy efficiency management plan on board as well. The settings of your engine, just to control this area as well. So just to put in these controls. So basically, these are MARPOL certificates, but also we should try to have a fair knowledge of what MARPOL is, try to know definitions of things like a special area, area due to, recognized technical reasons, due to its oceanographical and ecological sensitivity. Mandatory pollution measures are put in place. Try to know what your emission control areas are, refresh on that as well, because it's part of questions you could get asked for your MARPOL. So these are just the few MARPOL certificates we have. I think we still have some time before we keep on moving on to every other form of certificates, because for every convention, definitely there's a certificate. I think we've just finished with this bit. So if anyone has a question or something, we could, treat it as well before we move further. So thank you very much, everyone listening. If you have any question or any contribution from our officers, you could just quickly, pop in with something and you share with us. Thank you very much.
Thank you, boss. Thank you. The beauty of this thing is that there's no shortcut, really. There's no shortcut. There's no finish and go, guys. If you are on board, please just start opening this certificate and start opening these manuals. Basically, the more you play with them, the more you get familiar with them. And again, like Captain Harris has said, they're all, there's no point in knowing about the IOPP certificate if you don't know about the Form A and Form B. I know people that have failed their orals because of that. They mentioned the IOPP, and the examiner was like, okay, then what? And didn't know. The guy said, true life question, how many pages is your IOPP certificate? Of course, that means you're really, really going to fail now at that point, right? Because it's a stupid question. But yeah, so the examiner wanted you to talk about from A, from B, all those things. We need to be professional. I cannot say that enough, really. So while on board, your oily water separator, guys, what's different? Do you have a SOPEP on board? Do you have SNPEP? Why do you have each? Why don't you have both? Why do you have one? Which one do you have? So those things I think are very, very key, practical aspect of what Captain Harris has been mentioning. Because once you apply, you have the confidence to explain. If there's any question, please, so that we can move on. Banks, you have a question. I see you have a question. Unmute yourself.
Good day, sir.
Greetings.
Okay, I just want to add little to what Captain Harry said regarding the MARPOL certificate. Okay, I'll just pick points. Like the Annex 2, the certification, there are two. One is for a chemical tanker and one is for supply vessel. So for the chemical tanker is international, what do they call it? International this thing for the carriage of natural liquids, while the offshore vessel is certificate of fitness for the carriage of natural liquids. So those are two this thing. And I'll move on to the DGDOC. In DGDOC, we have two schedules, Schedule 1 and Schedule 2. Schedule 1 is gives you the location of where the dangerous goods are to be loaded on board, while Schedule 2 is it gives you additional requirements for firefighting equipment in terms of dangerous goods. And also for the sewage, it stated that a vessel that has more than 15 crew must have a sewage plant. So if you just know, I think if the vessel does not have up to 16 crew, it is not required to have a sewage plant. So that's what I want to add to what Captain Harry said.
Yeah, there's something as well that is, thanks for that, Max, thanks for that. There's something as well that I know people, the IMDG document, how many volumes do we have? And, you know, there's a particular part, there's an interesting part in the IMDG. Those things actually throw people up as well. Banks, do you recall what I'm talking about? I can hear you. You need to unmute yourself.
I can't really recall, sir.
You can't recall.
Okay.
Does anybody recall? So how many? Yeah, Captain Harry, so over to you, please. I don't know if there's anybody else on the question, please, you can please answer. Ask your question so that we can move on to the next part.
Okay, while we wait to get a question like what Captain Ty is just talking about regarding the IMDG, you know, I'm happy also for the contribution from D banks. Basically, what we're trying to say here is this is just a prep. Try as much as possible to, you know, look into these things critically, get as much information as you can, and just know it, especially for those on board at the moment. Like for the IMDG, you know, there's volume 1, volume 2, and the supplement, you know, but some people will just, you know, mix it up and get into some trouble with the surveyors, because as soon as a surveyor notices you're unsure of a particular thing, then he sits down there, you know. It's like he brings out his lunch or dinner or whatever, you know, and that's how the tone of your exam will go. And one funny thing is that this is like a psychic thing. The moment you can't get one question right, even if you're being asked the next one and you know it, you're definitely feeling it, because your mind is trying to, how do I prove to this guy that, okay, I could, you know, get through this. So basically that's that. If there is no question, we still have some time. We could now move into something else, which is quite big. I see seafarers these days, everybody keeps screaming MLC, MLC. And if you give a mosquito, pinch somebody on board, you know, or you just make some noise, MLC, my right. But how much do we know about this? It's quite important. It's a big topic now, honestly, especially for our management level, you know, mates, masters. How much do you know about the MSC? Like some people say the fourth pillar of maritime conventions. Well, the terms are quite good, you know. Every English makes the thing look huge, but a basic understanding of what it is what we need to know. Basically, everybody understands that MLC is just to, you know, standardize seafarers' working and living conditions. It's nothing more. It's for our well-being, to make us better. And then looking at that for the MLC, it's quite good. Every company, or I would say right now, are always implementing this. And honestly, I would say we've seen the positive side of the MLC, which I would say for me, there is no negative side. Okay, now let's dive into it. MLC has titles, basically 4 titles, you know, which there is a minimum requirement for, you know, seafarers to be on board the ship. Then we have things like conditions of employment. We have our accommodation, food, catering, and social security area part of it. And then also we have the health protection and all that. Then the certification part. So looking into the MLC, if we really want to dive in, basically for your vessel or any vessel to have, or they'll say it's MLC compliant, she would definitely have a maritime labor certificate. But how would she have that maritime labor certificate is the question. So surveyors would always want to test your knowledge on that. And looking at it, for every flag state that has confirmed to the MLC, it is required that they, give the ship owner a declaration of maritime labor compliance, which is DMLC 1. And DMLC 1 is just saying, for example, this is Nigeria, flag state. This is our interpretation of the MLC in compliance with that convention. This is what we want, and the ship owner who wants to get his maritime labor certificate will get that particular document, and he makes what they call the Declaration of Maritime Labor Compliance Part 2, or DMLC 2 in a short form. And everything the flag state has stated, he also goes in compliance with that, providing documentary evidence, and on the basis of that, he's also going to implement his DMLC2 on board. Interim certificates will be issued or might be issued to facilitate, the MLC implementation on board. And after they are going to gather evidence. We're looking at evidence. Now let's look at evidence. Here is basically what the MLC talks about. We'll look at the MLC has 14 titles, for example, and we saw in January 2017, other titles were added like amendments to the MLC, looking at your repatriation, how it's going to be handled, sickness, ship owner's liability regarding serious injury, sickness, and death as well. That was added to it. He's going to make provisions. He's going to get evidence that he has an insurance for that. He's going to have evidence that everybody on board has the minimum qualifications and training to work by having the right certificates. He's going to look at the situation that the minimum age criteria is being met, which is 16 years. He's going to look into situations that everybody has their seafarer employment agreements on board. All these are evidences that would be checked and used to, verify to see that she gets a full certificate. And this particular certificate also is valid for 5 years, which is subject to an initial, intermediate, and renewal service. This for the maritime labor certification. So basically, what we need to really keep in mind is for MLC, especially for mates and masters candidates preparing for orals, MLC is quite a large topic, I would tell you. Don't just read off MLC like knowing the titles, like you're trying to make a code. Everybody's trying to make one code, maybe fish jump into water and all that, and just list it. You get practical questions, I promise you. So while looking into the MLC, make sure you gain an understanding as well. I would really recommend that you go check through the MGNS for MLC, things that has to do basically with, management of crew, accommodation, feeding, catering, and all that. Read them thoroughly because after, giving the certification part of it, then they're going to probe you to actually see if you understand what it is, and, practical questions will be asked. So the MLC is quite large. Make sure you do a thorough read off on it and have a good understanding of it. So to get through for anything regarding MLC. And then, okay, so these are the certificates attached. Then also you have things like the informations of seafarers recruitment and placement agency that should be on board. Remember, every ship also in compliance with MLC will have the MLC, copy of the MLC itself on board, you know, a book for everybody to read. Things like the collective bargaining agreement, crew should have, you know, access to that. Then also things should be pasted on conspicuous places as well, like, you know, the seafarers, the ship owner's liability, you know, the insurance made for ship owner's liability regards to seafarers repatriation and liability for serious injuries, you know, deaths and all that. This should be pasted in conspicuous places, so have that in mind. Remember, MLC gives emphasize on the work and rest hours of seafarers. Know the minimum requirements, you know, for hours of work and rest. You know, mock that up, understand it, know what it is, understand that a schedule needs to be pasted on board as well, and the record of seafarer, everybody do that on board is how it's to be maintained. For mates and masters, take time, you know, go through the inspections that are required to be carried out in terms of accommodation and all that. Have a good understanding of what you actually check. Don't just tick the boxes through the checklist, because questions have been asked these days time and time again regarding that. You know, management of the catering side of it, you know, especially how the food will be prepared, given to the crew in terms of, you know, quality, quantity, and good nutritional value, taking considerations of different religious requirements. So that also you should read up, have a good understanding of that as well. So basically that's it. And I think we've talked about a few certificates. If we just still work towards now, we'll now look at the Ballast Water Management Convention. You know, every vessel would have an international ballast water management certificate, and also this certificate will also have the same survey, like valid for 5 years, and then you have your initial, you know, an annual, intermediate, and renewal surveys as well. Then remember also that every vessel will have a ballast water management plan, and also they would have a record book as well for any form of a ballast water exchange. And also have in mind that we're mentioning different plans all through, you know, from the previous lesson and this lesson. One question could also come. Remember, your plans are, you know, approved by the administration as well. You don't just have it printed off by your company or from the internet. All these plans will be approved by your flag to be on board your vessel, or if it's delegated to class, it will have that approval stamp as well. So keep that in mind. Then when looking to, like, for example, let's just dive in now quickly for the MARPOL, you know, things like your oil filtering equipment or your ODMCS, these are critical equipments on board. So questions could also pop in if they fail, what would happen, you know, remember how it will affect your certificate of class, you know, how you definitely need to apply for it if they push you further for a dispensation. So keep that in mind as well, because these are questions that could pop up. So having said about the Ballast Water Management Exchange, it's good to read up on it thoroughly, especially for those who are preparing for mate exam. Try to also understand, not just knowing the certificates, how to actually carry out this exchange. More importantly, they want to see how you take considerations for stability, you know, ensuring that stresses are well managed, you know, on board, you know, ensuring that you have adequate stability, it's well planned and all that. So have a good read up on it, and also know the what is required, you know, not less than 200, depth of 200, and in considerations where you cannot maintain that, maybe due to some reasons like weather and all that, depth of 200 and not more than, not less than 50 nautical miles from the nearest land, and which you have to get a permission from the coastal authorities in that particular area as well. So have a thorough read up on that. Basically, that's for ballast water management, and the other conventions that breed other certificates. Remember, basic ones, you have your tonnage convention, you know, you have your tonnage certificates, and also it's also important that we understand what the tonnage is for. Remember, just as we said the other time previously, that certificates basically are, you know, based on what your flag conforms to. Remember, somebody talked about, you know, when you have more than 15 persons, you have, you know, the sewage and all that certificate. Yeah, all certificates based on your tonnage, your certificates have also built up on that. Most of the MARPOL certificate for cargo ship, you have 400 GT and above. For tankers, 150 GT and above. For solar certificate, you're seeing things like 500 GT and 300 GT. So this is what the tonnage certificate is, gives you expressly what your tonnage is, how it's calculated and made. And then on the basis of that, also you have to see which certificate and which certificates apply. For example, let's say a very small boat of like, maybe let's say 75 gross tonnage, if not required for commercial basis, will not be required to have, a safety management certificate for ISM, because for her tonnage, she's not even up to that. So these are the things you also need to keep in mind as well. Who knows? Maybe somebody could pop you up with such questions. So that's a tonnage certificate. We have things like your anti-fouling convention, which will give you an anti-fouling certificate. And keep in mind, whenever there's a change of about 25% as well, then you need to, get it resurveyed and get a new certificate, because such certificate is valid for life. Loadline certificate is very important. From the Loadline conventions, you have your Loadline certificate, basically how your freeboard has been assigned. And this particular certificate would always lead you into surveys. It's so common that they want you to do a survey on Loadline. So try to understand what it is. It's just about talking about your vessels watertight and weather tight integrity, below and on the upper most continuous deck. And so keeping in mind, for every the Loadline certificate will always be having a condition of assignment. Looking at what the term clearly says, the condition of assignment is just like on the basis on which that your Loadline has been assigned, what has been checked, what corrections have been done, all this will be listed there. And all other details regarding how your Loadline certificate has been issued will be on your condition of assignment. And for those that want to have a good understanding of how to prepare for a Loadline survey, same way you prepare for every survey, for example, is the same thing. For a Loadline, for example, as you want to do a survey on board, definitely you call for a meeting. You go through the Loadline certificate, go through your condition of assignment, try to see if everything is the same, if there have been any changes, if these changes are recorded, if there's any form of non-conformities and all that, if they've been raised. So basically, these are what you check. Then you look from your condition of assignment. Definitely, you'll be checking things like, your vents, your air pipes, if you have hatches, if these things are weather tight, your deck houses, your scoppers, things like your side scuttles, frame ports, your load line marks, your draft marks, all these will be checked. Definitely, you would always, as per load line, a master should be given all relevant documentations for him to assess the stability of the vessel. So your stability manuals, if you have a load indicator, this should be checked. So these are basically, they are, more of that, but we can, list all of that. So thoroughly look into Loadline. And remember, it's also valid for 5 years. It's part of the harmonized system of certification. It's listed there. And for Loadline, you have annuals. You don't have anything regarding intermediate or, periodic surveys or initial annual still renewal. And basically, for the annuals, because definitely things will be checked, your vents will be inspected. So you have to do that annually for 5 years till it gets to the renewal point. I think that's for the Loadline certificate in this regard. So I think it's 10 minutes to 1 hour now. So I think we've been able to touch some few bits today, and we've covered, or remember, we've talked about solars, we've moved into MARPOL, finished with MARPOL, then we went into MLC. From MLC, we've moved into tonnage, ballast water management certificate, tonnage, and now Loadline. I think we've covered so much of it. Basically, every other certificate might be non-statutory or certificates that are really not applicable. These are the main certificates. These are things you could ask. So while knowing the certificate, especially that for solars, take note of your safety construction certificate. Make sure you understand what it is, know the survey intervals, how to prepare for the survey, your safety equipment certificate as well, survey intervals, understand what it is, know what is in the Form E, how to prepare for survey as well, your safety radio, so what is in the Form R, understand what it is, how to prepare for survey, then move down to your MSc certificates, make sure you understand what it is, of the DOC, your international, your safety management certificate as well for ISN, understand what it is, understand the survey intervals, how to prepare for the survey, ISPS as well, very critical, understand same, how to prepare for surveys, basically you just need to know what's in that certification and how you're going to make your ship ready for a survey. It's pretty simple, trying to close out every form of, non-conformities or deficiencies as well and all that. So at this point, I would say thanks very much, everyone. We would entertain questions. So I'll hand over to Captain Tayo now. We'll get some few questions, and definitely I hope you will understand, and our interaction this evening have been helpful for everyone to, get a step up on preparing for oral exams. So thank you very much.
Thank you, Captain Harris. And I will believe everybody in the house is also learned one or two things. Loadline survey is one of my, I love loadline survey, and I like this part of the loadline certificate actually, because a lot of people get caught up also, in this condition of assignment of loadline. Just to add, I know it's also part of crew protection. So, I remember I think I was relatively new at sea, and, we had these stanchions, the stanchions and the railings, which are also part of load line, and they were rusty. And one guy said, one of the surveyors said, this is rusty, I cannot issue your load line. And I was like, you cannot issue load line. This is above the water line. I couldn't connect it. So he said, go and check your load line. So those are all part of the load line as well. So yeah, thanks very much for that. I think we have covered a lot. And if there's anything we've not mentioned, probably it could be something specific to a particular vessel. I do appreciate your time, Captain Harris, for this. Does anybody have any question particularly on this topic we've covered? Does anybody have any question? So, again, if you don't have a question, it's okay. If this is your first time of hearing about certificates and this certificate, it's fine. If you are on board, do me a favor and do yourself a favor. Try to flip through the certificates. Now you've heard it. This will be available soon, online, so you can listen to it again. Try and check it out. And, as Captain Harris has connected the dots, please try to put your own time into learning it. All right. DMLC Part 1, check it out. DMLC Part 2, check it out. You can ask, why do you have the complaint procedure posted? Now you can complain straight to the flag. Why do you have the complaint procedure posted around the ship? So what are those things? Rest assured, ship owners don't do things just because they feel like doing it. They do it because there's something that tells them to do it. On this load line, I think there was an old joke that when load line started, people put the load line because they were required. They allow ship owners to put the load line marks, especially the plimsoll mark where they like, and some people put it at the funnel. It's just to spite the old thing to say, yeah, I know it's my ship. I can load it the way I like it, and I'll put the mark on the funnel, because they want to make the most money out of it. If you go to Calabar, crossing Calabar to Cameroon, and you see the guys that load their boat, they stand on it and feel it like, you can add more. So, but again, we don't want to send people to sea and don't come back. So protection of the crew is very, very important. Water. The water outside the ship is not a problem. The water inside Here's the problem. A small hole can sink a ship, guys. So without any question, I think we might be rounding up. Except somebody really has something to add. PY, I've not heard your voice today. How are you? Are you fine? Did you get something?
Okay, sir.
Did you get something from today's class?
Sorry?
What did you learn from today's class?
A lot of things. MARPOL,
I took notes as well, you see. I took notes.
Yeah, me too.
Back.
I also did.
Good. All right, that's good. So let's and again, there's something I learned that it's LTD. Learn, teach someone, and do it. So try and teach somebody what you've learned today. It stays more that way, you know. Even if the person is not related, your girlfriend, or you know, she might be bored anyway, but for some reasons, they're not bored, you know. Yeah, or your boyfriend, if there's a lady in the house, just explain to them, you know. Yeah. They're very good partners where you go for COC. I don't know if Captain Harris observed it.
Yeah.
You know, for my wife used to, you know, we used to do the cards, the flags together, Morse code together. I think they've stopped Morse code now, but we used to do Morse code. We used to do Morse code together. Yeah, and all that. The boys, they're very good. They can help you draw it. They can help you with the cards. So yeah, LTD, learn it, teach somebody, then do it as well. So pay it forward as well. Thank you so much, Captain Harris. Thank you, Banks. Thank you, BY. Thank you, Captain Delta Oscar. Black P, thank you. Hello, just feeling cool. Thank you very much. Techno Come On 101, thank you too. And have a lovely evening. And we'll get back to the streets. We go back to the streets now. Now we can go. You can go back to the streets. They say that during war is war, lunch is lunch, class is class. You know, we have to do everything at the same time. All right. So take care of yourself, guys. Have a lovely evening. Thank you. Bye.
Thank you, sir. Good night. Thank you.
Bye.
Bye.